Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Is He Fascist? Which is exactly the same as Is It Fascist, but we're looking at the opinions of an individual instead of looking at how a particular ideology plays out or organization. In this case, we're going to look at our good friend, Reagan Republican. And somebody decided that he was a fascist, New England progressive. I'm assuming what that stands for, and his handle is New England New Deal fan number 2. And he says, "Folks, join me as I attempt to ratio this fascist." So let's take a look at our category and let's try to determine if Reagan Republican is fascist. And aside from the absurdity of him calling Reagan Republican fascist, I think this would be a good opportunity to look at whether or not mainstream conservatism in the US is fascist. Now, we've talked about this a bit when we took a look at MAGA, but in my opinion, it really isn't. Although, as always, we will go through and do a legitimate look at the list without me breaking it in advance. But I think because this account posts the most boomer and normie con takes possible, this can be used as a proxy for the GOP establishment, as it were. So that being said, let us get into is it fascist? So the first category of is it fascist is, of course, an ideologically syncretic mixture of reactionary conservative and revolutionary progressive ideas. Now, this is kind of difficult because he refers to himself as a social conservative. I have seen no evidence of that from anything that he's said, like on any of his posts. He basically supports every socially liberal position possible, and he repeatedly shits on anyone who wants to use state power to enforce any kind of socially conservative measures or to try to move society in a more rightward direction. He says that he's Catholic, although he's said in the past that free markets to him are more important than his religion. And in a particular cringe round, this is claimed to be a joke, but I really don't think it is, that Josh Hawley and Bernie Sanders are going to hell for supporting tariffs. So is Reagan Republican a mixture of conservative and revolutionary progressive ideas? Or is he just basically a liberal? I'm going to have to just say he's a liberal at this point in time. Aside from maybe his crime policies, the other weird thing, though, about him is he loves the National Action Party in Singapore, which is basically a third position party, and it kind of is an antithesis of everything that he claims to represent. He also likes right-wing military dictators in Latin America who run autocratic governments and kill communists. So I don't really know. I'm gonna give him a 0.5 here and just take him at his word that he's a social conservative, even if there's no evidence for it, because we're gonna be Iron Manning him. Identitarian with a clearly defined in-group and out-group, cultural, religious, ethnic, or racial. No, he's like a Spanish American citizen who lives in Mexico or something like that. He said repeatedly neoliberal is a compliment, globalist is a compliment. He said nationalism's evil, populism is evil, any form of class warfare is bad, any form of identitarianism is bad. As with the leadership of the GOP, they are literally the only people. Okay, so mainstream conservatives are literally the only people who don't believe in identity politics, who are actually colorblind or think, oh, anyone can assimilate to the country they move to. The left definitely doesn't think that way, even if they may occasionally pay lip service to it. And the further right does not think that way. It's literally only mainstream conservatives. So we're going to give him a 0 in this category, because he's just not identitarian in any way. A revanchist or romantic nationalist desire to restore the nation to its former glory or avenge itself against a historical foe. I mean, he hates nationalism, he supports globalism. If anything, he wants to revenge himself against Trump. He hates Trump, he hates populists, he thinks the worst people in the world are people who support tariffs. So and he doesn't even live in America. He's like this weird Latin American, Spanish, um, American citizen who posts autistic maps about Mexico and Chile. So we're gonna have like zero here. Um, we're gonna move on to a belief in the supremacy of the party or state. No, he thinks that. Well, he thinks that tariffs are like a form of socialism. Not even like government management of the economy, not even nationalization, not even like universal basic income, but tariffs. Now, tariffs can range from being very mild and only on certain strategic industries to being all consuming and being on literally every imported product. Because keep in mind, there's different schools of thought to this. The original school of thought, and this is interesting because this is like if we want to consider the Federalist Party, as they generally speaking are, to be a conservative party, they supported tariffs for the purpose of developing infant industry. The idea was America could not compete industrially against Great Britain and some of the old world powers, so they were going to implement tariffs to make American goods competitive and then over time revoke the tariffs as American goods became more competitive with the purpose of developing infant industries rather than necessarily encouraging inefficiency and corruption at a local level. This is apparently, as a interventionist measure to help to build the private economy, is in fact a form of socialism. So we're going to say zero there. Although he randomly will, like I said, support Latin American dictators who kill communists. A conception of an idealized new man. Now, this might actually be the case, but in a left wing liberal context, where he has like some sort of conception of America as being like the new civilization, the proposition nation, that Americans are unique in not having identity politics, of being entirely focused on economic freedom and stuff like that. And the kind of jingoism that's comes from the view that America is like the only progressive country on earth. I don't really know, but I'm going to give him half a point here because I think it somewhat applies. Number 6. A foreign policy that places national self-interest above ideology or morality. Absolutely not. His foreign policy is 100% ideologically motivated. Like most things that modern conservatives or modern neoconservatives do, of which he identifies himself, it's entirely based on spreading democracy, but not actually spreading democracy in the sense of self-determination in which countries can make their own decisions. It's spreading an extremely specific form of classically liberal 19th century to 1960s American style liberal democracy, which America itself doesn't even really embrace. And you'll notice this because even in countries which I would argue are democratic, so like we can say Russia isn't a democracy because there's probably election. Well, no, I mean, sorry, I almost said something bad. You can say Russia's not a democracy despite it having completely legitimate elections with no fraud. But I don't think, regardless of whether or not there's ethics in video game journalism in Russian elections, you can seriously argue that if there was a completely free vote, the majority of the Russian people wouldn't vote for Putin. It's kind of like what they do with World War One Germany, where World War One Germany somehow wasn't a democracy because they had a king. So like World War One Germany wasn't a democracy, Russia isn't, Hungary isn't. The explanation I've heard for Hungary is because Fidesz just keeps winning elections. And because it's popular, more people vote for them. And that's like the explanation I've heard for why Hungary isn't democratic. Countries that don't want to have a liberal society and vote against having a liberal society are not allowed to have that. And this will be pursued even at the expense of alienating people, of de-dollarization, of just complete national self-decay, because the ideology is more important. An indifference to or marginalization of economics. No, he said repeatedly the only thing he really cares about is low taxes, deregulation, and libertarian conservative economics. He views all things separate. He said like the worst senators in the Republican Party were like J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley, and he said that he like considers people who like support protectionism but are socially conservative as being worse than most Democrats. So that's another zero. A masculine approach to problem solving, focusing on decisive action. Now, I'm actually going to give him a point here. This is kind of a difficult one to assign, but given how much he like posts about helicopters, how awesome Pinochet is, how like anytime there's like an autocratic government in Latin America where they kill communists, he says it's awesome. I think he's endorsed death squads in the past. I could be wrong. And it's completely ideologically inconsistent with like everything else he says. But I will give him that, is he wants to use death squads to kill communists, so that's something. Encouragement of mass political action, often in the form of a political party or other organization. That is 100% no. He hates populists more than just about anyone else. He thinks that Trump destroyed the GOP, and if they had just kept running Romney, eventually he would have won. He wants to vote for, he supports Nikki Haley because she's the least populist candidate who's running. He doesn't like policies that are aimed at benefiting the masses because inequality of wealth isn't, like, pretty much I think he's more or less said inequality of wealth is a good thing. I mean, to me, at best, it's a morally neutral thing. Obviously, you're going to have inequality of wealth in society, and that's healthy. The question is always how much inequality of wealth and whether or not that inequality of wealth is legitimate or not. Because if obviously if someone starts a company and they make billions of dollars, then that is legitimate. But if they are using state power or criminal procedures or force or something like that to make their business successful and they make billions of dollars, that's not quite the same thing. Also, if the upper class just evades taxes, there's a lot of different things here. But broadly speaking, he hates any form of mass political action other than death squads killing communists. Vanguardism, or the belief in an elite intergroup to safeguard the New Order revolution. I might actually give him a point here. Because of how much he hates populism and how much he hates like national self-determination, I do think he wants some sort of like liberal cabal of economists and like globalists to run things. He's the kind of person who unironically say, "Oh, the Bilderberg Group is awesome." I don't know if he's pro UN or not. Neocons are really weird when it comes to the UN. I don't know if he's like the UN's awesome, the World Bank is awesome, the IMF is awesome. We need to give them more power than national governments. He definitely, I does think, believe that it would be better if countries had less national sovereignty and they were instead ruled by a global liberal elite. An often charismatic leader who wields absolute or near absolute power over the state or movement. Now here's the fucking weird thing, is I think this might actually apply. Because he's obsessed with, like I said, military strongmen in a very personalist way. Like Pinochet or various presidents of Chile or Lee Kuan Yew. I still don't know why he likes Lee Kuan Yew. It's so weird. But I actually would say that this tends to be what he supports, despite it being inconsistent with everything else. And then sublimation of the individual and individual rights into the interests of the group, state, or party. Now, you could argue that he's so radically ideological when it comes to liberalism that he does think that individual rights don't matter in the face of pursuing his goal of like a global neoliberal, neoconservative world order. But ideological underpinning is basically that no one can be asked to sacrifice anything for the greater good, and any attempt for government to do anything is a form of socialism. So let's add it up. Let's see how many points Reagan Republican has. Reagan Republican scored 4 out of 12, which means he is not a fascist, He's not a para-fascist. I do believe that is the lowest anyone has ever scored on this list. And if he just lost his hard on for Latin American military dictatorships, he would probably get the lowest score possible. Really, that's the only place any of his points came from. The fact that these people think that Reagan Republican, the dude who just posts like left wing talking points, whose only friends are left wing electa bros, who's the only person I've ever met who likes Nikki Haley. Um, I just they think he's a fascist. I think says something. Like there's no aspect of his political ideology other than maybe killing communists that in any way resembles fascism. It's just like a retarded thing to say. Like if you want to call him a libertarian, if you want to call him a neocon, if you want to call him an American imperialist or global, like there's all kinds of things you could correctly label him with. But to call him a fascist is just retarded. Like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like you could probably make a better argument that literally any like social democratic politician is a fascist. Because of their views about state power than this dude is. So that is as Reagan Republican. To his credit, he is not a fascist. He got 4 out of 12 on this scale. God bless. Oh, you know what? Before we go, let's maybe look at some more cringy Reagan Republican tweets, because why not? Because I've been saving up some amazing cringe. Bernie's and Sanders and Josh Hawley will never ever see the pearly gates. Hawley is going to hell for supporting tariffs. Bernie isn't going to hell for rejecting Christ, but because he co-sponsored a tariff bill. Let's see here. The Republican Party should be the party of new ideas, small government, fiscal and personal responsibility, family values, and free market capitalism. It shouldn't be for fiscally leftist cabal of populists who support socialism to brand drag. New ideas. So, like, to him, new ideas are the most generic talking points from the 1960s. Stuff that was, like, cringy and out of touch in the 1990s. He's like, these are the new ideas, guys. I don't know what he wants by family values because he seems to oppose anything that actually relates to that. But it's just also like, when has a Republican, maybe someone can correct me, but like, when has the last time a Republican government has actually reduced the debt to GDP ratio? Maybe Eisenhower. It certainly didn't happen during the Reagan era. It didn't happen during the Bush era. It didn't happen during the Trump era. The idea that like conservative governments are fiscally responsible is by and large a meme, at least in a lot of Anglo countries. Let's see here. Terrible takes. The 2 worst Republican senators in the country, and worse than a fair share of Democrats. I like how he says new ideas, and you have like the 2 most dynamic, innovative senators. Let's see here. Let's try to find it. A bunch. Oh, by the way, we're gonna do just a Tate post. The world needs a hero, and he like photoshopped his head on Neo. It's fucking cringe. The toxicity that Trump has infected the GOP with isn't just a problem. He's on the ballot. The populists are killing us with independents and non-rural voters. That's why we lost Jacksonville. I don't think like Trump was even really involved with Jacksonville. I think he like, the whole problem with those 2 elections is Trump didn't do anything. Like if Trump had have gone and campaigned, like I'm trying to remember what the place was in Florida that DeSantis endorsed someone in and then didn't do anything and campaign from him, and that was a disaster. Trump wasn't even like involved with any of that. Let's see here. Shift burden. Okay, we have that. Trying to find some stuff. Okay. Here was one. The Tories posted a very rare L. Rael, have you looked at the past 10 years? Immigration, something the British people constantly want decrease, has never stopped. Brits are now a minority in multiple cities. The Tories are actively trying to destroy the British people. Literally, no one can make immigration magically stop. Like, you can't do it. Like, it's not, you can't just set the number of visas to zero. You can't just, like, mind the border. You can't just say, look, we're not allowing anyone else to come in. It's not possible. There's a meme that I lost that I had a long time ago that I thought was pretty funny. And it was, we can't build a wall. And then it shows the Great Wall of China, and then in quotation marks it says some conservative. Let's see here. There's some more. I would vote for Macron over Penn any day of the week. Let's see here. He ignored my response, obviously. What the fuck? It's some gay Catholic guy? I don't know. I just don't even know. He's talking about how, like, Blair was awesome. Blair is probably the worst. Blair might be the worst prime minister the UK ever had. It's close. To be honest, I don't really dislike Clinton that much. Chan was so Chan was an interesting because he passed a lot of pause, but he also actually did reduce the national debt. So I'll give him credit for that. Dear humanist teachers, it was a grave error to let me get economics as the subject area for my fiscal paper. Incoming in defense of freedom in pursuit of prosperity, neoliberalism. Okay, then we have the US will never have electoral maps this cool. Macron voters are patriots. He just hates the FN. He doesn't hate the FN for, like, good reasons. But that was the simp Photoshop people were posting of AOC. I need to do a video on AOC. The Republicans burnt, none's alive. Yeah, he loves Pinochet and hates Frank. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's see. His like, it's such a meme. Like, free pro Wall Street, union busting, Romney 2012, deregulation, tax cuts. Like, I'll admit, I supported Romney in 2012. I was, like, really pro Romney. I was, like, kind of a normie conservative at the time, but, like, I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. Let's see if there was some other stuff. Fiscal issues are greater than social issues because I'm not willing to become Pol Pot's Cambodia to just to ban drag. Reason why conservatives always lose, example number. Okay, what was this one again? Minnesota House passed paid family leave program. And he's of course, like, against it. Look, at this point in time, once again, would this actually help people, like, on our side? Would this actually help? Would family leave or maternity leave or whatever, child grants, that would actually help people who, like, evangelicals and Catholics who have, like, 5 or 6 kids? And I guess that's the reason why he's against it, because it might actually help somebody who we care about. We got this one. Name country that was ruined by U.S. foreign policy and then immediately exhales. Fritz was asking for the original video on him, which I delivered on. And this is the second one. So yeah, we just have a lot of cringe here, but I still am. I'm 99.9% sure that this account is real, but there's some days that I really gotta wonder. if Reagan Republican is a real account or if it's just a meme. That it's just literally some like edgy dude